What's up, guys? So I have not been in this chair. Actually, it was that chair over there. But I have not been seated in front of you guys in a long time. And I thought with the holidays arriving, first and foremost, happy holidays to all of our fans and supporters. And really a massive shift in the automotive market. I thought it'd be a very cool time to sit down and actually do a Q&A just about the collector car market or the car market in general. Now, I'm not an expert on many of these things, but there's been a lot of really interesting factors to happen over the last 90 days. And we are a very close observer to, actual sales, auctions, clients, and seeing the buzz around the community. So I want to thank everybody for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like. We're almost at 100,000 followers, which is completely insane. We never thought we'd have this much love and support from you guys when we started this journey. But let's sort of jump into the questions. One of the first questions that we got was actually about the Wolf of Wall Street Countach. And if you guys have been following our journey, flip back to a bunch of videos ago, we had the opportunity about almost a year ago to purchase the Wolf of Wall Street Countach. There were two cars originally used in the movie, and while we started on our journey to bring the car to auction, the goal was always to sell the car as art. The other car, the wrecked car from the film, popped up, and it ended up going to Bonham's auction. And unfortunately, it did not sell at Bonham's auction. I always thought the wrecked car would be just such a spectacular piece of art for somebody, and such a cool piece. It did not sell at auction. I don't know if Dubai was the right place to sell that car, but the online support for our car, the running and driving car, the car that was not wrecked during filming, was just incredible. I have to thank everybody for their support, their love for that car. I fell absolutely in love with the story of that car and the history of that car. I washed it as a kid. I didn't realize that. It was Mr. Kerbeck's personal car for a few years, and he drove that car. Very famous Lamborghini dealer in the Northeast. And it went to an incredible home. And VinWiki did a story with the former owner, Joseph, and he told the most incredible details from his experience with filming and how they had to change the rear deck lid and the front bumper and all these different things, and the famous scene with Leonardo. So the car ended up selling, as you guys know, with Sotheby's during the luxury week, RM Sotheby's and Sotheby's in New York. I think it was just a magical moment, witnessing what is a new world record for a Countach at public auction, a post-1978 Countach at public auction, total value of $1.655. The car is joining the most special home. I didn't find that out until probably 30 minutes after the auction, but just joining, I can't tell you how perfect the home that this car is joining, and it really makes me feel great. What's funny is a few days after the auction, there's a lot of comments. Some people said it would go to 3 million. Some people said 2 million. Some people said 1 million. But I would say that within days, we realized that the car probably could have and was worth a lot more. We had numerous people reach out to us and said, oh my God, I didn't know the bidding was on Friday night. I was at Art Basel in Miami, or I was traveling. I didn't realize. So I think the car really, in reality, I think we could have probably, it would have squeezed 1.8, 1.9, based on some very confidential conversations. But I'm so happy for the new owner, and really just honored to be part of that car's history. I really think we are in a moment, if you look at the last major auctions from RM Sotheby's, you have the White Collection, this famous Porsche collection of a developer that created this really magnificent collection of white Porsches, all low mileage, interesting history. He had spec'd a lot of really great cars, and then had some crazy financial issues, and essentially the whole collection went up for auction and broke world records. I think some key data points is the 996 GT2 from that collection, the 918 Spider Weissach from that collection, which did like $3.9 million. And then a few weeks before that is the famous Las Vegas auction during Formula One in Vegas. And again, you had the Formula One car break a new world record, $18 million with fees. You had all of these cars do really, really well. There was a Countach 5000S, the Ralph Lauren car that broke almost a world record. I would say at least for a red 5000S, it broke a world record of $830,000. But I think it's further proof with these last auctions that really, really special pieces continue to bring incredible numbers. So we will jump in. This leads us into our first question. Do you think that prices for vintage Lamborghinis in the EU are also going to skyrocket as they did in the US? Now, that's already happened. For years, Lamborghinis seem to bring a premium in the US. I think there's a generation of entrepreneurs and very aspirational people that fell in love with the brand in the 80s and 90s and today are buying these cars. But today, Lamborghini prices in EU are actually, I would say, higher for some cars. We recently heard of a Diablo SE30 Yoda, and I verified this with both the seller and the dealer that sold the car, sold just under 1.8 million, a right-hand drive purple SE30 Yoda, one of the recognized 19 factory cars. That is a new world record, I would say, for a Diablo example. Completely incredible number. A Diablo SV with some miles, not even some no mileage car, sold for just over 400,000 euros. In Europe, and there's been some other examples that have traded in Europe, some SE30s, a GT sold in Europe for a very, very big number. So I actually think that the EU market is catching up and has actually beat Diablo GT pricing, Diablo SE30 Yoda pricing, and maybe even Diablo SV pricing. Next question, do you think that the F40 is overpriced? And if you look at its rarity and specs, I think as a general, listen, Ferrari made a lot of F40s when you start comparing them to other supercars, something like 1,300 cars. But if you look at the nuances of the very special cars, things like a non-cat, non-adjust, things like a plexiglass car, about 110 cars. These were the early cars, plexiglass sliding windows, bare door panels, really built in the way that the original prototype that Enzo had sort of approved and honored in 1987. That car is very special. And then also the USA cars. The USA cars, there's about 230 cars. So I really like those numbers, those smaller numbers from F40s. That being said, there's always a buyer for an F40. I don't care what it is. Worldwide market has continued to show there's always a buyer. The market cap for those cars is really large. What do you think of Ferrari conversions, manual conversions versus the OEM versus non-OEM conversions? Do you think it'll hurt the value or affect value? And you know what's wild? There's a few companies now in the US that are converting 360s, 430s, 550s, 575s, 599s to manual transmission. And it hasn't hurt the value at all. 430 manuals today, I would say, are continuing to break records on Bring a Trailer. 575s breaking records at RM Sotheby's. I saw a car break a record. So you see these cars, the OEM cars, continuing to do very well, even though there's probably at least 200, 250 360s and 430s I know today that have been manual swapped. So they haven't affected the value of the OEM cars. I think what it does is it gives someone the opportunity to enjoy for a lower price point a really great car that's not as sensitive as the F1 gearboxes, and you have that sort of driver experience. So I'm actually open. I think the conversions are cool. We've had questions about Murcielago manual conversions. Unfortunately, I don't think anyone will ever get it perfectly right. With the ECU and the TCU, there's a lot of communication errors. People have done it with standalone ECUs, but still things don't work just as perfect. Ferraris, I think there's a lot of guys that have gotten the conversion right. I think this is just obvious. Why do you guys focus on older cars instead of current cars, generation cars? We focus on our DNA and what I believe in the long-term value. We focus on what I love, what I know. I lead that, even though we have the most incredible team of like 22 people. I lead all our purchasing and sort of the brand DNA of the company. So you're not going to see, unfortunately, we occasionally sell a LaFerrari or a 918 and all these cars, but only at Curated you're going to just see specialty cars that I've fallen in love with. Where do barn find leads typically come from? Specifically the Swedish SE30. This is not necessarily a market question, but I will answer it. This is digging. Building, over the years, building a reputation as guys that love these specific cars, chasing very specific cars. There's many cars here that we've chased for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Thoughts on the price and trends of a Ferrari 550 Maranello. This is one of my favorite cars of all time. I've talked about this. I love the 550 Barchetta. These cars are fun to drive. They're easy to drive. They're fast. They're comfortable. The AC is great. Parts can be a little hard to find sometimes, but honestly, they're not that bad. And what I love about these cars is you can do the engine service, the major service, the timing belt service, without removing the engine. So I really like that. It's not like the 355 or anything like that. Where do we see rare Ferrari race cars going value-wise in the next decade? If you guys, I don't know how many people have been paying attention to the pricing of F40 LMs, Ferrari XX cars, but all of these historic Ferrari race cars that at one point were very hard to sell. We had a Ferrari FXX Enzo that we could not sell for a while. These cars have exploded in value. F40 LMs today are anywhere between $7 and $10 million. Ferrari FXX it could be, 4.5 to as much as $6 million. So I think there's a generation that have now seen these cars as they can use them, they can track them, they can join Corsa Clienti programs, or they can use them at a private track. They're so rare when you start talking about these race cars. So there's a generation that just really appreciate them now. What's the market on Pagani Zondas like? Honestly, I don't know that well. I'd have to refer to some other experts. Great question. I've heard of sales trading anywhere between 8, 9, 10, 11 million dollars, depending on what the car is. These cars are insanely desirable today, and Pagani's done a great job of further developing that heritage. What do I think about the Bugatti EB110? I don't think this is a secret. We've loved these cars for years. I think historically, when you think of pre-war Bugattis and what they bring and what they stand for in the automotive world, and then you think of Bugattis today, the EB110, that period that was led by Ortioli in Italy, is so important to the history of Bugatti. They really did a great job of honoring what Bugatti was from pre-war. If you understand their engineering feats and details about Bugatti, I'm not going to go into the details to bore you, but really look into the history of Bugatti and what they stood for and why they were so important. Ortioli and that period in Italy, they did the same thing. We're talking about using the best engineers, the best designers, and developing the first carbon fiber monocoque for a road car, quad turbo, 4-wheel drive, V12. We're talking totally state-of-the-art, breaking world records. I could go on and on and on. And these cars, if you look in the fit and finish of these cars, they are magnificent. They're way ahead of their time. I think they're on the same league as a McLaren F1. I know not everybody agrees with me. The market does not agree with me yet. But I think when you think of these really special variants, I think one day we're going to see these cars double, if not triple in value. My personal opinion, the market's not there yet. Porsche Turbo to collect. So when they were still somewhat affordable, I used to daily drive a Porsche 993 Turbo. I love those cars. I think I love the 930 Turbo. I have a very special affinity with a 3.6 Turbo. I think they're just so iconic because the whole bad boys thing. I think they're the perfect mix. The 993 Turbo is almost too good. It's too perfect. The 930 Turbo is not perfect. So the 964, the 3.6 Turbo is like this perfect in between. But again, I am not a Porsche expert. I just love the cars. So that's my opinion. Best collector cars under 100K, 996 Turbo. You can't go wrong. I think CLK 55, you can't go wrong. As you guys know, I'm a huge fan of those cars. I think any of the really cool Vipers, so the early RT10s, the 97 GTS, I think those cars are so cool, so special, especially the more rare examples. I think they're so iconic, too, for a period of time. Are Ferrari Californias ever going to be a collector kind of car? No. These are mass production cars. Thousands and thousands of made. I believe there's 1 or 2 or 15 manual transmission Ferrari Californias. Maybe those will be collector. But I am not a fan of mass production cars. They're transportation, and that's what they need to be looked at. I hate to think when people start talking of those cars as collectors or investments. Are second gen Ford GT prices coming down? I don't think so. They've gone up a lot. I think they're perfect. They're just such a great car. They always seem to trade like clockwork. It's like a Rolex, or you know, they're always within a small variation, and they do everything right. Manual transmission, V8. I love those cars. 05, 06. They've gotten way too expensive for me to buy for myself, but I always actually wanted a striped Elite 4 GT in my personal collection. Not going to happen, unfortunately. What is the coolest car you have ever sold? This is not a market question, but I'll answer it. Porsche GT1 Straussian version, Roof Yellowbird, Mura SVJ, and definitely Wolf of Wall Street Countach. Maybe Miami Vice Testarossa in there as well. I think this goes along the lines, what are the best beginner collector cars to purchase? This is also based on budget. I think an Audi R8 manual transmission. I love the V8 cars. I think they're still undervalued. I think they're very cool. 550 Maranello, you can't go wrong. Service costs are not bad. I am a massive fan of Diablos, but we'll talk about that for some later questions. We'll talk about the Diablo right now. The most car for the money today, I think it is a later production Diablo. I do not think you can go wrong with any Diablo with a light clutch, power steering, good AC. You know, the lighter clutch was introduced in late 94, 95. Power steering was introduced by 94. The ACs improved over time, and I think these cars, they're usable. The service costs are not terrible at all, and they're just so rare. At one point in 1998, Lamborghini, the worldwide production in their business plan for Lamborghinis was 180 cars. So imagine, this is very, very limited production. These cars are fast, they're iconic, and I think there's a generation that'll love them. And when you compare them to Ferrari prices, they just seem cheap. When you compare them to Ferrari supercar prices. Where do you think the Lamborghini Espada will go regarding its value and presence? I think as more collectors today seek out Lamborghini as a brand to learn, and I see this every day, Ferrari collectors and Porsche collectors looking towards Lamborghini for the first time and saying, man, I'd love to learn more. I think people are finding these unique little Lamborghinis, things like a 350 GT. I'm not a fan. I think if you're thinking of just value, I think, listen, the future of value is 80s and 90s cars. But if you're thinking about it, just a wacky, incredible, unique car that was such an expression of Lamborghini's bold statement in that period, the Espada is a no-brainer. We're talking V12, this massively long luxury GT car, and they're just so cool. 4 seats. I think they'll always maintain their value. They might go up a little bit, but I don't think we'll see the same type of record-breaking numbers that we will continue to see with today's 80s, 90s, and early 2000s cars. What is a car that people think is super collectible, but is a terrible collector car? I'm not going to answer that one. I do have a few opinions on that, but I'm not going to answer that. How do you see the market for manual Gallardos evolving? Listen, they're great cars. I think, you know, I am terrified of like very high mileage Gallardos. I had, as you guys know, an engine failure in a higher mileage Gallardo in one of Ed Bollion's cars many, many years ago. But I think they're just really, really great cars. Some of the most fun I've ever had in my life was in a Gallardo 50th anniversary. So the 2-wheel drive, manual transmission. We had a car here that I just couldn't get out of. I kept driving it and driving it and driving it. So I think that is a no-brainer for someone that wants to drive something, enjoy something that will have long-term value. Stock market versus car portfolio. So, you know, this is a great question because I hate to talk about financial advice, or I hate to talk about cars as alternative assets, but they are becoming that. We can't ignore that. What I love about the car world, when you think of an investment, and I love about the car world versus other assets and investments and things like that, is the amount of passion that's in the car world. I think when there's, in life in general, love or passion involved in something, it's always a win for success. Whether you're starting a business, it could be anything. So I'm really a believer of the long-term value of these cars because I see so many passionate people today. The young kids that have played Forza, Gran Turismo, they're passionate like I've never seen before in my life. When I was a kid, none of my friends knew what a 959 was or an F40. Today, I see a young generation of people, young kids, they all know what these cars are. They know the numbers, the details. Then you have social media. Social media has put these cars into the mass market and created a new passionate generation about these cars. Super, super key factor here. Then you just have how people look at wealth today. I think people are experimenting and looking at their lives and saying, what fulfills me? I call it like this post-COVID mentality. And you see more and more people as they acquire wealth or as they make a little bit of money, they say, well, what am I gonna put my money into? And I think that cars in general have become accepted as an alternative asset, which is incredible. But most importantly is the passion that's tied to it. And I hate when people say, like they talk shit about people that, oh, it's a no mileage car, it's never gonna be seen. You know, having passion for a car doesn't mean going and driving it and tracking it. Your love for a car can mean anything that you want it to be. So if it's sipping a coffee and just staring at your car and appreciating it, even if you've never driven it, there's nothing wrong with that. Appreciating the design, the technology behind it, there's nothing wrong with that. At the same time, if you want to jump in your 550 Maranello or your 996 Turbo and go put 100,000 miles on it, God bless you. That's incredible. So I really think there's so many different passionate people that love these cars and appreciate these cars. So while I don't want to give financial advice, I just think it's a solid asset. I think we've got a long ways to go. And I just see a generational shift today where people are accepting that these things are assets. They love them. They're excited. There's car shows, there's events, there's auctions, there's all these things. So I see it as a very healthy market, actually. It's almost a good way to end this. But Murcielago Roadster Appreciation, I think the most undervalued car today. And this is going to be a two-part question. So based on the value of LP640 manuals today, I think the two most undervalued Murcielagos are a Murcielago Roadster manual, one of 38 for the North American market, and a Murcielago 40th anniversary, which they only came manual. They're all numbered, they're super rare, 21 or 22 for the market. So I think those cars are terribly undervalued when you compare them to LP640 manuals. Someone asked about Carrera GTs and LFAs. Listen, the market is continued to do incredibly well for LFAs and Carrera GTs. I think Carrera GTs, this will answer another question. Carrera GT is one of the most incredible cars I think ever made. It's absolutely perfect in every way. I will say the service cost can be a little bit expensive. Luckily, there are people like Jimmy Rapazzi and all these guys that support the cars today. We've sent cars to Champion Motorsports, Tom and Jimmy Rapazzi, who are just, they're legends in the space. So the service cost can be a little expensive, but I will say it's almost a perfect car. Once you get the hang of the first, releasing the clutch, it's not that hard. There's a video with my wife, teaching my wife how to drive one, so you should be able to get it. I think it's one of my all-around favorite cars of all time. And I think that's about it. These other questions are sort of repetitive, or just I can't answer you. What do I think about Corvette as investments for C3 to C6s? I don't know. I'm sorry. As you guys know, we love the Callaway Speedster. I love interesting pieces like that. I think anything that's manual transmission, 1990s, early 2000s is awesome. What's the best 90s cars, collector cars to invest in, 30 to 75? I think I answered that. Viper GTS, Viper RT10. I think they're super cool. The Callaway Corvettes, I think, are super cool. 348 Spider, that's a car that I think is also very cool. And I think that's it. I want to just sort of end this by saying, at the end of the day, it's fun to follow the markets, it's fun to follow the auctions, but the best advice I can give is follow what your heart says and follow what you love. It's our philosophy here. It's what we do every single day, and I see the most happy collectors and the most passionate collectors just buying what they love. Yes, it's a nice feeling to know that whatever you're buying is going to hold its value and potentially go up, but that's not what it's all about. It's about our passion. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you so much for being such a massive support and team. Happy holidays, and stay tuned. We have a ton more great content coming.